Ladies and gentlemen, what is about to follow is not horror. This was a thing that I have actually planned to make around Halloween, but you know how busy Halloween is for narrated. But I thought this would be the perfect occasion. You might not know this about me, but I am a huge fan of Android Netrunner. It is a card game and I love it so much. There's this podcast, the RunLastClick Podcast, which is all about Netrunner, and they've recently released their 2-year anniversary special. Now both hosts, Chris and Eady, have decided to write a little fan fiction, and they narrated it on their show. So I figured, why not honor this amazing game and amazing podcast by giving it another narration? So here you go. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce you to John Hackman. Chapter 1. Sleepless in cyberspace. John Hackman stared at his Desperado screen. He had been hacking all night, and he was tired. Hacking was John Hackman's business, and business was good. Too good, some might have said. He had been paid more credits than most people would make in a year, just for one job. Easy money, he had thought to himself at the time when he had read that email. Now, he wasn't so sure. There was more ice and encryption protocols than he had expected. John took his sunglasses off and rubbed his bionic eye. He thought of his brother again, and then got back to work. Maybe it's time for something drastic, he said out loud in his empty apartment. It was time to call in a favor. He went onto the secret hacker internet and messaged Noise. Oi, virus boy. Noise hated that name, but John didn't care. Noise owed him. Yeah, what do you want? Replied Noise. I'm calling in a favor. I need your help hacking into a bank, said John. A sigh was the only response. Then John saw the word that he knew he would see. Fine. It was on. Both of them hacking at the same time made it much easier. They could attack the bank's defenses from 2 directions. Divide and conquer, John thought to himself. Noise was the final ingredient that this job needed. The results were delicious. Soon, John was looking at the data he was after. Right-click, copy and paste. It was that easy. Almost too easy. Cyberspace alarm sounded. John was prepared for this and pulled the plug on his internet. He hoped Noise had the good sense to do the same. No way to trace something that isn't there. The perfect job. The perfect crime. The perfect life. John Hackman smiled to himself. Time to celebrate, he thought to himself. Today had been a good day, and it was just getting started. Chapter 2. Opening Movies, Part 1. The sun rises over the edge of the crater, burning John Hackman's eyes like a wall of static after a long night spent liberating the accounts of a small bank. He slips on his mirror shades and turns toward the elevator that leads to his old friend, Aesop. He burned his lady last night, but that guy can always seem to find a use for anything. He shoulders his way through the door, trenchcoat now welcome in the cool darkness of the pawn shop. He approaches the counter. Shades on, this is about business. Aesop examines the memory chip, plugs it in, and runs a few test cycles. Yeah, I can do something with this. He always can. How much? I'll do you a trade. John Hackman doesn't flinch. Aesop is an old friend, but business is business. I don't do trades, I do business. This relates to your personal interests. I remember your extremely specific request for archaic paper entertainment from a certain Clot Mancy, and it seems someone else has taken an interest. John's eyebrows rise above the carbon fiber tops of his mirror shades. Aesop continues, I assume we have a deal. John pulls down his shades. This had better be good. All it is for now is a mem chip, universally compatible but heavily encrypted. John has the key loaded on his pad. John had been crashing arcades in an effort to keep a low profile, but the secrets he didn't know about his brother were proving too dangerous, and he had to move upstock to the Earthrise Hotel. He headed back there now, apprehensive as to whether he'd hit the big time, or if his good nature had been exploited again. He slipped the chip into his console, ran the decryption algorithm, and went to grab what the lunar authorities stripped a diesel down to from the minibar. His console pings before he's had a chance to register his disgust at the price being charged by the hotel. Furiously, John jacks in. What could possibly be so tiny that it could decrypt so fast? It seems to be purely text files, no complex data structures or media containers. He scans through it. It is the finishing of a script, almost complete and ready to be produced. Actors selected, although they did not know it yet. Their corporate contracts would bind them to appear in it. He begins to read it in detail. To begin with, it reminds him of his favorite Clot Mancy novels. But as he continues, something strange happens. Maybe it's a stalk lag, maybe it is the knockoff diesel, but something awakens in his brain. As if he's jacked in. Pure, visceral information. It's his brother. It's not a rewrite of a classic. They're taking what happened to his brother and turning it into a movie. The script awakens neurons burned on that run where he went too deep. Faced an intelligence both inhuman and human, but bent on his destruction. His memories overwritten, but the fear left by the scars remaining. Not enough to remember what actually happened that fateful night his brother disappeared from his life, but with a surging realization that they would twist the outcome and forever sully his brother's legacy, whatever it may be. He takes stock. John Hackman knows people, and most of those people owe him a favor. He dials up the pad of an old colleague from Levi University. A professional contact, if you will. It turns out some of his students have found some vulnerabilities that they have not quite realized the full potential of during a white hat session in the lab. It's in beta, but it's more than functional. More terrible caffeinated drink. John is going to need to find a supplier for proper diesel if he's gonna stay up here. It's the kick he needs to jack in, though. He cruises around cyberspace, entering the corporate zones but keeping a low profile, currently appearing as a basic accounting AI. Scouting round NBN, he spots a blur of journalists around the new productions cluster. He scoots in, looking for the archives. Admitted on a routine chargeback query, John engages his sneak door, and suddenly his world flips and collapses on himself as he is thrust into the central operational server of NBN. John is shocked by the huge amount of HB data stacks. Something big was going down if those two were working together. Then, he saw it. The reason this had flagged on one of Aesop's many feeds, the fast tracking of a project, but it was not yet in play. John jacked out. Hours had passed and he was exhausted, but he knew what he must do. NBN would announce their lies about his brother to the world as breaking news, and he had to stop them so he could discover the truth and clear his brother's name. He jacked in again. They said it wasn't healthy, that you should rest before re-entering cyberspace. But cyberspace didn't sleep. He positioned himself to attack NBN's development server full on, but began to lose himself in the subtle fractals of the layers of ice. This wasn't normal. He'd trashed unpublished news reports before to help clear someone's name, and there was never this amount of ice on NBN servers. John realized this was it. This was do or die. He was going to need everything his brain had, and probably more. He grasped for the hidden pocket in his trench coat and pulled out the stims. What had the guy said? Military grade, possibly experimental, incredibly illegal, and don't take them all at once. John Hackman didn't do don't. Chapter 3, Opening Movies Part 2. The stims hit him like a morning star to the face. Suddenly it was very clear what he could do, and he wanted to do all of it. With the barest hint of sanity, he dove towards the most obvious weakness in the shifting walls of ice. He also dove towards dozens of other weaknesses, his consciousness splitting inside himself. The many parts of John Hackman pulsed through the multitude of ice, avoiding some with bits of code John had once used. His memory now perfect, summoned into being with a mere thought. Other pieces being broken with casual disregard, everything suddenly simple and immediate. He is somehow aware that two parts of him work together to simultaneously steal from NBN and then pay them with the proceeds for access. Then he sees it, the ultimate goal, carefully hidden behind a few pieces of unresed ice. All parts of John Hackman join the attack, and one makes it through, to encounter a screaming bioroid, terrifying beyond all comprehension. He charges onward regardless. He must face his fear to find the truth. A single server, and at the heart of it, what looks to be a long string of coordinates. Still riding the stims, he visualizes the coordinates, a face on the moon, his brother's face. He knows what he looks like now. Now he can find the truth about who he is. He boils with rage, the other John Hackman's furious but not knowing why. They were going to draw his brother's face on the moon for some terrible movie. A sudden fear overtakes John Hackman. Who am I? And how can I know? I am John Hackman! He screamed, body rigid with rage as he took control of himself again. Except he wasn't. Thin trickles of blood ran from his nose and left ear, swiftly coagulating with his advanced genotype. But the damage was done. He had lost the parts of himself that had seen the first step to finding his brother.